Hello, Alex again, and welcome to Warehousing. In this episode, we'll talk about the Health and Safety at Work Act. So, the Health and Safety at Work Act, very important piece of legislation. But a lot of people say, oh, it's very nanny state, there's too much fiddling and what have you, and it's very expensive and gets in the way of making money, or some such junk. To understand the Act, you really need to look at the world before the Act was implemented. There were health and safety laws at the time, but none that actually really went far enough as far as responsibility goes. The turning point was the Flitchburg disaster. A chemical plant blew up, and with the legislation as it stood, nobody could be found guilty of anything, in effect. The whole incompetence, poor working practices, that sort of thing. And Lord Vogans was sort of tasked with going off and doing his investigate and find out how to put in legislation that achieved what they wanted. Also, that worked for all businesses. Not an easy thing. But Vogans' report outlined what was necessary, and 1974, the Health and Safety at Work Act was implemented. So what does it do? It puts the onus of responsibility not onto the mythical company that, oh, that was this department, oh no, that was that director. It puts responsibility onto the individual. And where it is a company, it will go for individuals responsible in the company where breaches have happened. So, what does that mean exactly? Let's say that you're messing about on your pallet truck and you're pulling donuts by the loading bays. Everybody's treated them as scooters at some point, that's fair enough, but suppose somebody gets injured because of your stupidity. Well, they'll have a look at, as a matter of course, the health and safety training you've been given and that sort of thing. But primarily, you're the one that will be found responsible. And you're the one that could face fines, imprisonment, loss of job, or what have you, depending on the severity. Now, the Act is enforced or what have you through the Health and Safety Executive. They're the ones that will bring prosecutions. But they also have quite a good website that covers major health and safety as well as minor health and safety issues, teaching you how to do risk assessments and that sort of thing. Lots of free downloads. And the reason it's all free, and if you don't have a website, you just phone them up and say, I'm a new company, I need some health and safety advice. They'll send you a starter pack. And it's all free. So if, because of the ease of access, etc., you don't comply with the legislation and etc., you can have the book quite rightly thrown at you because it says, well, look, all the information's out there, it's free and easy to access. Why didn't you? So liability is the big thing. And this, of course, will open a gate to lawsuits and various other bits as well through private courts. But one case that hit the news a few years back, a dumper lorry, you've seen them, the big 8-wheelers, was travelling down a hill in convoy with 2 other lorries. The young lad driving it, 19, first job, just passed his test type fail. Brakes failed. And he whizzed down the hill, couldn't stop, smacked straight into the back of a family car and killed everybody inside. His truck ended up on its roof and he ended up crawling out. Meanwhile, the other 2 trucks that were travelling in convoy with him legged it. And they legged it back to the yard. And the MD and the chief mechanic spent about 9.5 hours on working on the trucks, putting right everything that they should have put right earlier. And what they found was that the driver wasn't responsible, because he talked about that flashing ABS light in his cab and been told by the chief mechanic, no, it's all right, don't worry about it, it's just the bulb. And yeah, reasonable man hypothesis, if you're told by the chief mechanic of the company it's okay, it's okay. So he was absolved, but the chief mechanic and the MD weren't. They got 7.5 years apiece for corporate manslaughter, because they had been consistently cutting corners on safety to save money. And that money saving aspect the HSE has a very dim view of. Now, another incident springs to mind, and that was a guy sharpening his drill bits at work. CNC drilling machine takes a drill bit out. Now, the way that you sharpen a drill bit is you go over to an angle grinder and you put an edge on it. Yeah, so you just resharpen the edge and take it back. He was provided with safety goggles, but thought, it's a 5-second job, don't need those things, can't see clearly anyway. Lost an eye as a hot bit of shrapnel, basically. So he took him to court for an industrial injury. And the company said, but we provided health and safety kit, we trained him, and it was the problem. The problem was they didn't enforce it. There's no supervisors shouting across the yard saying, get your high vis on, or anything like that. None of that. So what they found was that the company was partially responsible for the injury for not enforcing. So those are the sort of things that the HSC will bring prosecutions for under the Act. But it also has rights and responsibilities, not just on the organisation but on the individual. You as an individual must comply with all health and safety training. You've got to tell somebody if you think that something's dangerous, and you've also got to look after yourself and other people's response in a reasonable fashion. The employers, they've got about quite a list of things, but primarily things like washing facilities and toilet facilities. PPE is a good one. They have to pay for it. Now, usually, if you're a temp, you pay for your own PPE because you're an external specialist being brought in. But also training. All training related to the job or the safety of the job is free. They can't charge you for that. Yeah. So there's lots of things like that. They've got to carry out risk assessments and various things. So it stipulates what you must do. And these rules and regulations are usually in the staff rooms or various other places or main entrances of every workplace in the country. It's legislation that they put up this poster. In addition to that, you've also got various other sort of things, sub-laws, like that state with RIDDOR how often you should, how you should report things, when you should report things, and that sort of thing. LOLA, which deals with lifting equipment, and KOSH, obviously, which deals with chemical and those sort of things. So you've got more specific legislation dealing with specific items themselves. But primarily, the Health and Safety at Work Act is a general catch-all that can be brought to bear on any situation, whether it's self-employed taxi drivers or large conglomerates. And it deals with things like what to do if an accident happens or what have you. It helps companies understand the chain of responsibility and also what their liability is and what's allowed and what isn't, like any legislation. Very powerful piece of legislation. But all we think it's too much hassle, there's common sense about that, blah, 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 we can look after ourselves. Yeah. Common sense, don't believe in it. Common sense isn't that common. We talk about it, but then, if you want to see what common sense is really about, go and have a look at the Darwin Awards. And also, common sense might be telling you, I don't want to do this, but your boss might be saying something else, and people can get bullied into doing unsafe things, especially for chasing the buck. So if you want to look at what happens when people cut corners with health and safety and say, yeah, it's all right, I can do it. Have a look at traffic cops, and specifically when they pull over foreign, notably Eastern European lorry drivers, and they have a look at the state of the rigs. You're seeing brake boxes that are rusted through, and one good tap and you've lost all your brakes. All sorts of bald tyres and God knows what that wouldn't pass an MOT in the UK. A really good one though is the American health and safety, or lack thereof. America has this funny division between state and individual states and the federal government. Now in the UK, we can legislate for all members in the UK. But in America, it depends what happens at individual states, because you still have this thing about state rights and semi-independence. And health and safety is one of those things that's covered state by state. The other thing as well is that PPE, for example, is not necessarily compulsory. I remember watching a video on eye protection, and the implication there was that you choose to wear the PPE, you're not made to. Consequently, every month America gets about a couple of 100,000 eye injuries or something daft like that, and the whole onus is on the individual to wear PPE and to buy the right stuff. Now in the UK, it's legislated. And I think some of the problems are that in the UK, we've got a long history of employment rights as well. And a lot of these things have been negotiated by the unions or by workers' organisations as well as the HSE. In America, the unions sold out to the mob. It was all about backhanders. Yeah, making sure the right people get the contracts, and not so much about health and safety and individual rights. So consequently, health and safety leads to a lot of injuries. And while you might be safe yourself and a good worker, you might also end up working with pillocks. Yeah. So there's lots of videos I could show or link you to on health and safety. But the bottom line is the legislation makes it your responsibility to look after your own safety and those of your workmates, and to follow the health and safety legislation. If you don't, it comes with criminal, not civil, criminal implications. Something to think about. Anyway, until next time, I'm Alex. Take care. Be safe.